From one neighbor to another, WCTE PBS is here for you. Coming up next is Live at 5 on WCTE and its streaming platforms to provide updates on communities throughout Central Tennessee.
Hi, I'm Cephas Ablakwa, Director of Education and Engagement with WCTE and Putnam County Schools. On today's Live at 5, we're going to have Corby King, Misty Stewart, Judy Schinbeckler, and Jason Stickler. Join us in a few minutes for Live at 5.
Come along as we embark on a new series with Michael Akins, telling the stories of the change makers in our community through their voices. Hear advice from local business owners and regional celebrities to help our community achieve new heights. Together, it's your business with Michael Akins.
Welcome to Live at 5. Again, I'm Cephas Ablakwa, Director of Education and Engagement with Putnam County Schools and WCTE. And as I mentioned earlier, today we have Director of Putnam County Schools, Mr. Corby King. Corby King, how are you, sir? It's good to have you on the show today.
I'm good, Cephas. Thank you for having me on. How are you today?
I am doing very well. Thank you so much. And we're at spring break right now, right? And we've made it. We just got a quarter more of the academic year to go. So could you give us an update on what all is going on?
Wow, it's so much happening right now in the school system. The spring semester is always really busy for us. This past couple of weeks, we've had a lot of time reflecting. It was a year ago this week, actually, when we closed school, when the pandemic began. We closed school for the 9 weeks. And just kind of turned our world upside down, educational as well as within the community. So we spent a lot of time reflecting, but being thankful for being able to be in school, being able to reopen in August and get through 3 9 weeks. That's amazing. Our teachers, our staff, our administrators, all of our personnel have been amazing. Our students and our families who have trusted and believed in us. It has been a good year. So now we're ready for the spring rush. All of the spring activities, spring sports that will be taking place. Spring, we'll have graduation and promotion ceremonies.
Mm-hmm.
Those will still look different than what they have in years past. But we're going to get to have those type activities this year, and we're excited about that and excited for this opportunity.
You are exactly right. It's been a challenging year. I mean, a year ago, we had the tornadoes in our community, and then we have COVID, and we had the ice storm just a few weeks ago. So with all this, I've heard a lot of talk about learning loss. Could you tell us about that? Is there any evidence of learning loss or any anticipation? And what are the plans to address those things?
Sure. And Cephas, we do have some learning loss. I spent a lot of time, talking back in the fall. I felt like because we opened school and were able to be in, that we would not have the amount of learning loss that some people talk about. But as we're receiving multiple data points, we do checks throughout the school year with our students. MAP testing, parents will be familiar with that term, universal screener. As we do those tests and we look at where we were last fall compared to where we are this fall, we do see that there's some learning loss,
right.
And there are some gaps. They're not huge, they're not insurmountable, but we can identify some areas that we have work to do to get caught back up and get back on track. Our teachers are working hard to overcome those now. We're also going to be offering summer camps. That will be a huge piece of targeting the learning loss to students who are struggling the most, who are the farthest behind. Schools will be reaching out to parents, contacting them, inviting them, encouraging them to attend. It's a 4-week camp. This is for grades K through 8. So it'll be rising, first graders through 5th graders in one camp, and there'll be a separate camp for rising 6th through 8th graders. And those, the locations haven't been determined yet. We're waiting. We have to get information from families. There'll be a survey going out soon, or families may already have that as the time we air this broadcast. But a survey going out soon, letting families know, please, log on, complete the survey if you're interested in the summer camp. But schools will also be actively recruiting students to attend the learning camp, and that's just based on some of the learning loss that we've diagnosed.
Well, with those camps coming up, Could you really express or tell us about anyone that may be watching that have any concerns about about COVID and what precautions are taken during these camps?
Sure. So right now, and we're still 9 weeks away, and our community is still receiving vaccine. More and more folks in the community receiving vaccines. We are continuing to see low transmission, low spread in the schools. Our numbers have been decreasing for several weeks. So still a little bit early to say exactly what it's going to look like this summer. Right now we're still under the masking requirement. But students are getting to do a few more activities in school, working in groups a little bit more than what we did early in the school year. So there are some restrictions that are kind of loosening a little bit, but we're not completely ready to wide open yet. But I'm hopeful by the summer that we'll be able to remove some of those. It'll be more like a normal school day, but I can't say for certain today what that's going to look like. We really have to continue to monitor the situation in our community.
Right. On that note, this being spring break, I have to ask, because every time we either go home for Thanksgiving or Christmas, there's always that concern that the COVID is going to spike, because it's been proven that kids are not getting COVID from school compared to the home. So could you address that? What can we, the public and the parents, be doing while the kids are going on spring break and being with friends and families?
Sure. So, and we saw the huge spike after Thanksgiving that everyone talked about. We were very fortunate after Christmas. We didn't see that spike. So we're hopeful, Cephas, when we come back after spring break, that we're not going to see huge spikes. And again, I think that goes to as more people have contracted it within the community, but also more vaccines being available. But we're going to be watching those numbers very closely when we come back over the next couple of weeks to see if we do see that spike. What I would encourage families to do right now is just continue to stay the course. We're hearing that from the CDC. We're hearing that from Dr. Fauci and others in the medical community, that continue to social distance and wear the mask when you're out. But if you're around people who are vaccinated, who have had it, then you can loosen some of those requirements. It's safe to gather. It's safe to do that if you know that you're in an area where people have been vaccinated, or be outdoors as much as possible. And distance when you can. So continue to do those type things. That will help us get the numbers down. And also, as family members are able to get the vaccine, as that becomes more widely available, I still encourage people to please take it. Go. That's our fastest path back to normal, would be people getting the vaccine and approaching that herd immunity in our community.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. King. It's always a pleasure to have you to keep us updated on what's going on in our school system. We'll be right back with our next guest. Thank you, Corby King, for being on.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
I hope you'll join me for one-on-one when my guest will be Martha Teichner of CBS Sunday Morning. She's going to be right here with us via Skype, and we want you to join us. One-on-one, don't miss it.
Welcome back to Live at 5. Again, my name is Cephas Ablakwa, Director of Education and Engagement with WCTE and Putnam County Schools. Our next guest is Judy Schinbeckler, who is Putnam County School Learning Supervisor. Welcome, Ms. Judy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us about your role. What exactly is a learning supervisor, and what do you do?
So one of my roles as professional learning supervisor is to make sure that our teachers are trained and that they meet state law in the number of training hours that they need each year. Another hat that I wear is also the district testing coordinator.
Testing coordinator. And when you say testing, you're talking standardized testing?
Yes, state standardized testing district.
Tell us about that. Tell us about the standardized testing. With COVID, we've heard a lot of talk about, do we need to standardize tests? What's the point of this? Is that going to be a place of spreading COVID? Could you tell us what standardized tests is and the importance of it, and if we should do it or not during this COVID time?
Yes, we are testing this year. The state of Tennessee is continuing on with state testing. We are already making plans to conduct those tests. It is very important that we do that because of COVID. This is not a year to be pulling away, to say we're not testing. It's a critical year, especially with remote learning. We need to measure our student performance, see how they are performing. We definitely need to identify any areas of learning loss for students and identify what supports we need to be putting in place to help those students.
So what are the subject areas and the things that we're going to be testing for our county?
So for our district, we will have testing achievement tests for grades 2 through 8. That will be all students in grades 2 through 8, including remote learners. We also have certain subjects in the high school level that take end of course exams. Those would be English classes, biology, U.S. history, and the integrated math classes.
Tell us, you mentioned end of course test or is EOCs, and then you didn't mention this, but I think you're going to be doing TCAP as well.
Well, all of TCAP is actually an umbrella. It's a suite of tests. And so that stands for the Tennessee Comprehensive Assessment Program. And so both of these tests, the achievement tests for grades 2 through 8, as well as those end of course assessments, EOCs called, both of those fall under the umbrella of TCAP assessments.
Right. So how do we prepare for this? How do we prepare for the EOCs and the TCAP?
That's a good question. And actually, preparing for these tests begins on day one of school. These assessments measure a student's progress on learning and mastering state standards. Our teachers begin teaching those state standards day one of class, and they do that every day the students are in class. So it's a continual learning process. It's not something we're going to come in the week before and try to prepare. Our students and our teachers have been working hard to prepare our students all year long by teaching those state standards.
So, Ms. Schinbeckler, when are these tests going to be administered?
Okay, so we have a 3-week testing window that begins on April 21st and closes May 14th. Within that 3-week window, the individual schools have a building testing coordinator that sets the schedule for that individual school. So all the testing is performed within the 3-week window, but each school may be doing different tests on different days.
So for the parents at home and for us, the viewers, how do we find out when our students, our child's testing date is?
Please watch for any communication from your school. Our schools will be communicating with parents via the normal school communication programs that we already have in place. Remote learners, we will be contacting them via email, so please be watching for that. If you do have questions, I do encourage you to reach out to your building testing coordinator at your home school or the school that's in your living area.
All right. Well, before we go, I want to ask you one or two more questions. So for us as parents and the ones in the community, how can we help our student or child prepare for these tests?
So as far as learning, as I mentioned earlier, that is a year-long process, but there are several things parents can do to help their students perform well. Things such as just making sure they get a good night's sleep. You know, they need to be well rested when they come in the morning. They need to have that good nutritious breakfast. So when they sit down to take that exam, they're focused solely on that test and they're not tired or hungry or things that might distract from their performance.
All right, that is very good information. Thank you so much, Ms. Judy. It's good to see you and it's good to have you. Enjoy the rest of your spring break. We will be coming back with Jason Stickler. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Phil Oldham, President of Tennessee Tech University. I'm going to be joined by Dr. Kim Hanna, Professor and Dean of the Whitson Hester School of Nursing, and Leanne Ray. the director of the J.J. Oakley Student Health Center. We're going to be talking about the worst global pandemic in the last 100 years.
Welcome back to Live at 5. This is Cephas Ablakwa with Putnam County Schools and WCTE, and our next guest is Jason Stickler. Mr. Stickler, it's good to have you.
Hi, nice to be here.
Thank you. You are the Putnam County RTI coordinator, correct?
Yes, sir.
Could you tell us what that title is and what do you do? For those of us at home, what is RTI?
Sure. So RTI stands for Response to Instruction and Intervention. And what we do in our schools is if we see that students need additional assistance in subjects such as reading and math, then we provide more intensive support in those areas. And so I facilitate a team across the district of interventionists in our schools to provide that support to our students.
So do you, I hear you do something called universal screening. Could you talk about that and what that is?
Sure, yes, sir. At the beginning of the year, in the fall, we administer 2 screener assessments. One of our assessments, it comes from the B.A B.S. platform, which assesses students in basic reading skills, letter names, phonemic awareness, fluency, comprehension. And then our other screener that we offer is through NWEA, and that's our MAP growth assessment. And so we screen students in reading and math, and what that does is it gives teachers an idea of where students are at the beginning of the year so that they can modify and adjust instruction to best meet the needs of our students. And then in the winter and then in the spring, we offer the universal screener again to see how students are progressing through the year.
So with the information that's gathered, how is this information further used? I think you talked about how it helps the teachers, but could you talk about a little more in detail for say, for an example, a student in a class that's behind?
Sure. So let's take reading, for example, our B.A B.S. screener that we use. Our classroom teachers would administer that assessment in the fall, and they would get a report back that would rank the student as percentiles and also give a score on each of those measures. So, for example, a second grade student may take the screener and the information would come back and it would indicate that we may need to provide additional assistance in comprehension or phonemic awareness or letter sounds. And so we're able to use that particular data to basically inform our instruction and modify that instruction to target those skills throughout the next sequence of lessons in the classroom.
And are these extra classes during lunch, or are these just incorporated into the regular classroom that a student is in?
In Putnam County, we have it established as it's a separate class. So if a student is in a Tier 2 classroom, they may go for an additional 30 minutes of intervention time, or if they need more intensive intervention, they would go to an interventionist for 45 minutes a day to receive that additional instruction.
And if my kid were to get communication from the school that, hey, my child is behind in reading, how alarming is that, and what should I be doing at home to support what you guys are doing in the school system?
Sure, that's a great question, and one of the advantages that we see often with both the NWA assessment and our B.A B.S. assessment is that parents are informed not only of the general score or maybe the composite or overall score, but parents are provided those subgroup or those category scores as well. So parents know that, well, my child may be struggling in letter sounds or phonemic awareness or algebra in map growth, and so then the parent is able to target at home as well, through some extra tutoring or some homework help. They're able to target those specific areas as well.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for this information. This is very informative, and this actually helps the parents at home and our viewers to know exactly what goes on when a student falls behind. One last question before we go. We've got about 30 seconds. Is your position in your job, would that also help with this learning loss that we've been hearing about? I just talked to Mr. King about that. Is this part of that intervention as well?
Oh, most definitely. our screeners basically shine the light on the road that we need to go down to help our kids. So if we don't know where we're going or we don't know what the target is to help them in the classroom, these screeners actually help us target the students where they need the most assistance at.
Well, thank you so much, Jason. It's so good to see you, and thank you for being on Live at 5. We'll be right back with our last guest, Misty Stewart.
Well, Elmo loves waterfalls. Sometimes they have rainbows, and they're fun to splash around in on a hot day. Elmo's family likes to visit waterfalls like Burgess Falls and Fall Creek Falls. What are your favorite waterfalls?
Don't forget to watch Sesame Street on WCTE. And visit sesamestreetincommunities.org for more resources for kids and families.
Welcome back to Live at 5 with our last guest, Misty Stewart. Misty, how are you doing? Welcome to Live at 5.
Thank you. I'm doing great.
Well, Misty is a colleague of mine here at WCTE. She is the coordinator of education and engagement. Misty, what new grants do you have going on?
Well, right now we have a very exciting grant called Sesame Street in Communities that we're working on.
Could you tell us a little bit more about Sesame Street and Community and what all is involved in it?
Sesame Street in Communities is actually a resource that's available free online for parents. And so the grant is to help get that information out there, share those resources, and share how they can be used at home or in the classroom.
Now, you are on today because you've prepared a video for us to watch and to learn. Could you set up the video and tell us what the video entails?
Yes, so on this video, we're going to walk you through how to look for resources as either a parent or a provider on Sesame Street and Communities. And then we're actually going to use one of the resources that we find from that search, and we're going to show you how to do a quick little activity at home.
Well, thank you. We're going to turn to the video right now.
We all know and love Sesame Street. It was the first show of its kind. It not only entertained, but it also educated. Its creators saw an opportunity to prepare every child, no matter where they lived, so that they could all start school at the same level of readiness. Sesame Street and Communities is building on a more than 50-year commitment of serving and learning from families and providers, working to build smarter, stronger, and kinder kids, one relationship at a time. So what is Sesame Street and Communities? It's an online content hub. It's a collection of the best of community engagement work that's been created over the decades, plus new monthly content. It offers parents and providers and community organizations shared messaging, shareable content, and simple strategies for kids and families in their daily lives. As part of a grant from Sesame Workshop, WCTE is going to be introducing you, the families of the Upper Cumberland, to Sesame Street and Communities and all of the resources that it has to offer. So in this first segment, we are just going to do a quick overview of the Sesame Street and Communities website. So to get there, go to your browser and type in ssic.org. The first time you visit the site, it's going to ask you in a pop-up window whether you are a parent or caregiver or a provider. If you're a provider, like a daycare worker or a teacher, you can access professional development like training videos and webinars and a partner portal. If you're a parent or a caregiver, and that means any caring adult in a child's life, you get to access the same topics in alphabetical order. When you get to the site, you can do a quick search. I need help with potty training, for example. Or you can scroll down a little bit and you'll see here that you can actually search activities by age of the child, the time it takes to complete, or the type of activity. So for example, there are storybooks where you can read along with your child or press play and let the Sesame Street characters read a story for you. Videos, printables, articles for parents and caregivers, and interactives. Let's go ahead and take a look at the topic of family bonding. So when you get to a topic site, you can scroll down and notice that it'll be divided into subtopics as well. So for example, this one is for all families, grandparents, blended families, moms, and dads. This is so that you can find the resources that apply to you more quickly. You can also sign up for Sesame Street and Communities to get email updates about the activities or resources that are most important to you if you want. Or by signing up, you also can favorite things and save them for later. So for example, if I really like the family bonding collection, I can favorite the entire collection here by pressing on the star, and it'll save it for later. Let's take a look at the resources for all families. So when we get here, we can scroll down and see that we have the same options to search by age, the time it takes to complete, and by type. In this collection, the resources that we have are interactives like the Monster Fairy Family Challenge, and songs, videos, printables, and articles for parent and caregiver providers. So let's say that you wanted to do one of the printable activities, like From My Heart to Yours, but you don't have a printer. If you actually click on Download Printable, it'll take you to view the document, and you can see that for most of these, you do not actually need to print anything. From My Heart to Yours is a great activity to do at home with your kids anytime. It doesn't have to be Thanksgiving or Valentine's, but it's a great way to practice gratitude. So ask your child if there's someone that they would like to thank for helping them every day. They might say something like, I would like to thank my grandmother for helping me get dressed, or I'd like to thank my dad for cooking me some really good food. Write down what your kid says, cut it out in the shape of a heart or any shape for that matter that they want, and let them decorate it. And then they can give it to the person as a way to show their gratitude. Simple activities like this help create lasting bonds and help build those relationships that children need to thrive and to be healthy. And it's easy. You don't actually need anything other than just yourself and some paper and pencil. So for accessing and looking at Sesame Street and Communities materials, you can actually text Sesame to 833-541-0146 to receive updates, or you can always contact me. I'm Misty Stewart, the Education and Engagement Coordinator at WCTE, and you can reach me by email, mstewart@wcte.org, or at 528-2222, extension 213. Thank you for joining us.
I hope you enjoyed that video. I want to thank our guests, Corby King, Judy Schinbeckler, and Jason Stickler, and Misty Stewart for joining us today. Thank you, our viewers, for watching us. Please join us next week for our next episode of Live at 5. Thank you.
From one neighbor to another, WCTE PBS is here for you. Join us again tomorrow for today's show to re-air again at 5 p.m. We will return with a live news show on Thursday of next week at 5 p.m. Thank you for watching.